too. We were having an issue. So Lisa was on the other site with me, and now she's in. So
yeah, there's two different links that got sent out. One that was by email and one that was in the calendar. They're two different links.
Yeah. So, and I couldn't get on at first onto my Chromebook. It said I didn't have network. So I went on my iPad. Anyway, I'm here. So sorry. I've been trying to do this for a while again. So
welcome.
Crazy. Yeah. Thanks. I hope everybody's okay.
There's Lisa.
There's Lisa.
Okay, well then I will stop. Okay. Well, then we'll get started. It is 7:05 p.m. on Tuesday, August 11th, 2020, and I'll call the meeting of the Manitowoc Public School District Board of Education to order. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Yeah, then we'll just start with our roll by our secretary, Lori.
Thank you. Lisa Johnston.
Here.
Dave Nichols.
Here.
Richard Mitch.
Here.
Meredith Sauer.
Here.
Catherine Shalou.
Here.
Elizabeth Williams. And Kathy Willis.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we have the minutes from the July 28th meeting. That all of you should have seen that on board book. If there are no questions, I would need a motion and a second to approve those.
I would move that we approve the minutes from July meeting.
I second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. I have no communications other than we continue to receive emails and contacts from people in the community, whoever it may be. Again, you're free to answer those, answer them as a board member. And make sure the communications go through. If they email you, for example, through your school email, then you need to respond that way. But otherwise, you're always welcome to do that. You can reply to them directly. You don't need to reply to the entire board. You don't want to include the entire board in a communication. That would open up an open meeting. So otherwise, that's all that I have. We'd have committee reports, and Lisa Johnson, you would be up with the personnel committee.
Yes, we had the personnel committee on July 29th, and we had a discussion on additional staff that is needed due to the COVID-19. And Joyce had explained to us that we need to hire custodians to do additional disinfecting, cleaning the classrooms in between the AM and PM sessions, also disinfecting books and any other shared student things. They also said that they would be using the existing paraprofessionals to assist with the cleaning and disinfecting, but we still needed to hire custodians. And what she's proposing is that we hire 4 custodians to work 3.5 hours per day to have a total of 70 hours per week. It will be a limited position just for this upcoming school year, and there will be no benefits paid because it is only 20-hour per week positions. The approximate cost of the 4 custodians would be $25,000, and that will be taken care of through the CARES dollars. We'll be paying for those custodial hours. So we will be voting on that later on in the meeting. The general board will be voting on that for approval. The second item that we need is nursing. And these will be designated COVID-19 school nurses. They will help develop policies and protocols, and it will be district-wide. And what they are proposing is that we hire 1 additional full-time nurse to work an 8-hour day. We also have currently 3 nurses. 2 are part-time, 1 is full-time. So what they're proposing is that we would move the part-time nurses up to full-time positions. And again, that would just be for this upcoming school year. The nurses also would be starting on August 3rd. Normally they start towards the end of August, but we figured we needed a jump start on them coming aboard early. Again, those will be paid with CARE dollars, and the approximate cost on that is $85,000, and we will be voting on that towards the end of the meeting. The other thing we discussed was the proposed teacher handbook change to the school forest. This had come up a couple of weeks ago. We did revise it a bit and brought the payment down. So now we're looking at smaller increases. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that in the report, but what we're proposing is a $50 payment would be raised to $60. A $75 payment would be raised to $90, and a $125 payment would be proposed to $150. And again, those are for school forest overnights. If we ever do get to the point again where we go back to the school forest, we would have that in our handbook. So again, we would be voting on that later on in the meeting. The approximate budget impact would be $2,500. This is something that we have not changed in our handbook for those payments for about the past 10 years. So we thought it would be time to increase that up just a little bit, okay? Also, Joyce had gone over the facial covering protocol for the staff. We have mandated that all staff are to wear face masks beginning on August 3rd when they are in school buildings. We will supply a face mask with an MPSD logo on the front of it, which they can wear. We also are telling them that they could bring their own mask if it does meet the guidelines that we have laid out. So those would be the options. That was effective on August 3rd. So that is in effect right now for all staff in our buildings. Joyce also gave us a staffing update. It's New Teacher Week coming up August 17th, and it's the hope that new teachers will join their respective buildings and meet with their principals within the next week so they can get ready to get their classroom set up and get that ready for the upcoming school year. And that would be about all we talked about. Oh, one final note here. As of July 29th, there were still 5 vacant teacher positions. If you have any questions on that, I'm sure Joyce would be here to answer those for you. We've also hired a general education behavior programs support person. So that person has been hired, and I'm sure Joyce will be able to fill you in on who that person is when she gives the personnel report. So that's about all I have for the personnel committee meeting. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Lisa? If not, we need to approve the minutes from the personnel committee meeting. I would need a motion and a second.
I move we accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 What, Kathy?
Yes, I said aye.
No, Kathy Willis, I can't hear you. You may have.
Well,
Kathy
sorry.
Willis?
Mark, I was wondering if you could please explain CARES dollars so that the public understands and for those joining us, because I don't think anyone knows exactly what CARES dollars are and where it comes from.
Sure. The federal government allocated money to the state in order to help support public institutions for the additional expenses that may come in because of COVID-19. The state of Wisconsin allocated the resources based on title allocations. So school districts who had the most free and reduced students received the most CARES Act money. So for the public information, the Manitowoc Public School District is eligible to receive the 14th largest CARES Act recipient in the state because we host, likely, the 14th most free and reduced students in the state of Wisconsin. So our population, that's how that is allocated. There is no check that the district will receive in CARES Act. We have to pay for the money and then get reimbursed based on their criteria. They've opened a window now for us to give a plan. The CARES Act dollars must be paid or spent by the fall of 2022. So we actually have a year and a half give or take, to spend those dollars. I anticipate that there are lots of things that we have already purchased that would qualify, PPE things, and these additional human resources specifically to help support the health and safety and well-being of our students and staff are also there. One of the big focus of CARES Act is to make sure that we have allocated enough resources for students who might receive free and or reduced services. So programs that we have had going all along, like free and reduced lunches that students can pick up. We can't go back and get CARES Act dollars for things we did in the past, but in the future we can. So that's a general synopsis of that.
Thank you, Mark.
Is there a total figure on the dollars that would be available to the district? And again, understanding they're not sending us a check, we will just be submitting our plan. But what is the total amount?
Right, we're anticipating $780,000 that the district will be eligible to receive resources. Some of those monies will go to parochial schools. They have yet to, all of them have yet to give us their plan. And if they choose not to, I'm not sure if we keep the money or we just get it reduced. But the majority of the money comes to the district. The money actually comes to all schools, and then the district has to help the parochial schools with their distribution. Yes, the way the CARES Act is set up now is we won't receive any money. I guess the best example I could use is that a couple years back, the district was eligible for a few $100,000 for the safety grants. And so what happens is we wrote the application, they approved that, then we spent the money, then they reimbursed us. That's likely how the CARES Act money is going to go. They've just given us, here's your initial application of how much you're going to get. Here's the resources that you can use it on. And then when you put it in place, we'll get it back. I imagine, and I'm pinch hitting for Sean tonight, so I don't want to speak too much. If you need more information about specific things, I'd ask him. But it's my understanding that we will receive the money within a quarter, meaning fiscal quarter of the year from asking for it. So we're not, if we ask for it now, within this quarter, if it's eligible, we would receive it. Not, we're going to get it at the end. So in this budget year, we should expect to receive the resources, with some exceptions. If you're asking for it in June 15th, you may not get it by June 30th at the end of the fiscal year. However, we will receive it basically in quarters.
Okay, we'll move on then to the report of the superintendent. We have the payment of vouchers. I know Sean isn't here. I'm guessing, Mark, you'll discuss that for us, or at least
Yes,
show us that.
I will. Just gonna share my screen, so. Okay. If you have access to that on your board book, the payment of vouchers is enclosed. One of the things that you can notice is that we've expended $5,163,928.94. $729,000 of that comes from biweekly payrolls, and right now we're only paying hourly and 12-month employees. So our teachers will begin their first payment in September, and then you will obviously see that increase. So I would try to answer questions if you have on any of the vendors or checks that we're having. But if there's a specific question, I would ask you to talk to Sean. He is working hard with our auditors right now, and we'll have a report, preliminary audit report, likely at the next board meeting.
Okay, if there's no questions, I would ask for a motion and a second on the payment of the vouchers.
I would move we pay the vouchers.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the payment of vouchers are approved. Then we'll move on to the personnel report from Joyce.
All right, thank you. Let's see, you should have a personnel report that was included late last week, originally in board book. And then I believe either yesterday or today, we added an addendum. So any questions as you look through either the original personnel report or the addendum?
Yeah,
I was just, sorry, Dick, excuse me. In reference to what Lisa talked about earlier in the personnel committee meeting minutes, at the time of the committee meeting, we were screening applicants for the general education behavior program support person. And you'll see on the personnel report that we have extended an offer. Her name is Lynette Seminar, so she's on the report to be approved by the board.
Joyce, are the dollars for that position, does that come out of the set aside funds from the disproportionality issue?
You know, that's a great question, and I'm either going to turn that over to Mark or Joanne, so you get the correct answer.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. I was also wondering, you know, if we've picked up a number of new positions, you know, over the last several years. The math coach, you know, is a new position. You know, is that cost neutral? Have we found that, you know, with the dollars somewhere in our budget, or, you know, it's where are funds coming from, you know, for that new position?
Yeah, I might need help from Mark or Jason, but so we now have, there's a full-time math coach at Jefferson, full-time at Franklin. They were here last school year already. And then this year, of course, we're adding a math coach that will be split between Monroe and Madison. Again, I want to defer to Mark or Jason. Some or all of them are coming out of title dollars, I believe.
Yeah, I can help you with that. So
Yeah.
typically you'll see the district has had reading teachers coming out of title. And what we've done and reallocating some of our dollars within title is supported math as well. Obviously, when we're looking at areas of improvement, we know that professional development and support of our educators is often a great tool to help support student achievement. So we have math coaches who are helping support high levels of math instruction through title dollars.
Yeah.
That's why they're in title schools.
Mark, why is the math coach only at Monroe and Madison? What about, say, Jefferson? Is there a reason for that? I mean, there must be a reason for that.
Good
So
question.
Kathy, we did the school year that just ended, so the 1920 school year. We do have math. We already have math coaches. We have a full-time math coach at Jefferson. We have a full-time math coach at Franklin, and then we will be adding, hopefully with board approval, we will be adding a third math coach at the elementary that will be split between Monroe and Madison.
Okay.
So Jefferson and Franklin already have a full-time math coach.
Okay.
Paid for by title dollars. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Joyce, what is a level movement?
Oh, sure. Those are both individuals, teachers who obtained their master's degree. So they moved from a level 2, which is a bachelor degree level, to a level 5. A level 5 is the first level or lane for somebody with a master's degree. So both of those two individuals recently obtained their master's degree.
Okay, thank you.
So Joyce, what is in between then? Like, what is 3 and 4? Because that's a 3-level skip.
Yeah, so level 3 would be if you have your bachelor's degree plus 12 credits. Level 4 would be if you have your bachelor's degree and 24 credits in something. I mean, it doesn't necessarily even have to be toward a master's. So, yeah. So
So-
level 2 is a bachelor's. And then if you have a bachelor's plus at least 12 credits, you're in a level 3. A bachelor's plus 24 credits, a level 4.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Joyce, correct me if I'm incorrect, but I thought in Lisa's report, she said there's still, coming into mid-August, there's still 5 teaching positions that are still vacant. How optimistic are you you're going to be able to fill them with some quality people? And if not, what's the strategy?
Sure. Yeah, we were actually down to 2, and then with 2 recent teacher or a retirement and a resignation, we are back to 4. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question, Dick. I know one of our open positions is still a deaf and hard of hearing teacher, and I just had a conversation with Joanne today, talking about a plan if we are not able to fill that. So we do have we hope to fill it. We'll keep it open, we'll keep it posted, but we did talk about a plan if we're not able to fill it by the start of the school year. Same with the other positions, Dick. 2 of the positions we just recently posted because of, again, a recent retirement and a resignation. But we continue to have conversations. One potential option, if we can't find a quality candidate, we do have some very high quality teacher subs that we likely would, reach out to start the year if we need to. So.
Okay. And
Yeah.
your most recent resignation, the high school special ed teacher, was that a cross-categorical position or was that a disability specific position?
Joanne, you might have to help me. I think it was is it ID? Help me out, Joanne. ID?
Yeah, you're right on, Joyce. Yeah, we would consider that person to have a mainly intellectual disabilities caseload, but these days, almost all caseloads are somewhat cross-categorical because they may be serving students who have accessed special education through autism, for example, or other areas, but mostly ID.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we still need to approve our personnel report. So I need a motion and a second. And we'll do both of them together, the original report and the addendum.
Okay. I move we approve the original report and the addendum of a personnel report.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's carried. Then we'll move on. It's recognition of our board council. That's informational purposes. You should have a board book listed who our firm is that we would work with. Mark, maybe you can just add something on that while we bring this up every year.
Yeah, so it's general practice for us to bring our district's attorneys to the board for approval. Davidson Keelthaw has served the Manitowoc Public School District for many years. And what I would tell you is that right now we work specifically with Bob Burns. And Bob has worked with us in many different capacities, but for the most part, it's work. So he works with Joyce often on personnel issues or things that we are putting in handbooks and that kind of guidance. If we have questions about special education, we actually go to Belo and Vetter. And the reason we go to Belo and Vetter is because the attorney that we used to have for many, many years was with Davidson Keelthaw, left, and went to Belo and Vetter. And we decided that we prefer to have the candidate or the counsel who knows our system, our kids, and our people. And she is probably one of the best in the state. And so we don't have that much allegiance to, I guess, the actual firm they work for, but really we are really more allegiant to the actual attorneys that serve the board. So if in fact we would ever come to the board usually the board would have counsel if we had some kind of a grievance or if we had an expulsion hearing. If the expulsion hearing was in a regular ed, we would see Robert Burns, and he would prepare all the paperwork and serve as the board's attorney, meaning he would advise the board. And if we had a special ed, Mary Gerbig, who works with the Below and Vetter. There isn't anything that we have to do in particular. I would tell you that we do our best to try to have internal conversations and research topics. But there are times where we need to have counsel, and we ask them, and they are very receptive to just working with us through the details. So they're very handy and necessary, and I would also articulate expensive.
Okay, any other questions on that?
No.
Then we'll move on to the superintendent and director's report. Mark?
Yeah, again, just open any questions specifically regarding things in the superintendent director's report.
Yeah, I had a question, Mark, about the child care proposal at McKinley. I was just wondering, is the YMCA looking at a short-term or a long-term agreement? And also wondering, is that going to impact consideration of the sale of the McKinley facility?
So great question. Right now, the plan would be as long as we would have a blended ed or model that would provide families with need to have places where their kids to be. If we come back at some point to a regular 100% face-to-face, they would go back to their school-based models, which we currently have in previous years. We had at 2 of our schools where before and after school care was available, and we use some transportation. Right now, we don't want to mix our kids in that model. I had a conversation today, and they have some plans. They are interested in just trying to get a feel for how many families are needed. But McKinley would not be a long-term plan for them. It would just be during this pandemic period to try to support families who might be looking for a place for half the day or all the day for their children. And then I think there are a couple pieces that I would say. We haven't reached out to a realtor at this time to put the McKinley up for sale. I think we agreed that we could do that. There's probably some pros and cons. I think the pro would be that a lived-in building and an active building sometimes is better than a vacant building, because we are paying for the heat and the light and the utilities at that place, and the YMCA would be doing the thorough cleaning and disinfecting, not the district. And so we would come up with a plan that would make it probably beneficial for both of us. So I do see some good in that. That doesn't mean that if someone came to the district with an offer, we wouldn't bring it to the board. But right now we haven't listed it publicly, and that's something probably that we'll have to circle back with the committee to talk about the choice of a realtor.
Mark, I have a question. Mark, I have a question on topic number 5 that you have listed in regard to the Manitowoc County Health Department. What kind of indicators will we need to use in order to make a determination on how we'll move forward once we do reopen school? I'm sure that will be a factor, but what other factors could be? We had indicated at our last meeting that there will be some kind of a matrix. What will that include?
So one of the things
that I continue to work with our local agencies, both Brown County and Manitowoc County, is trying to find a matrix that all public institutions will use. I've been told for the last 2 or 3 weeks that is coming. I actually have a meeting tomorrow with state superintendents that indicate that we should be seeing something from either the DPI or the DHS, Department of Health. But the fear is that we're going to see it on the 24th of August. That's supposed to help us use the data that they're the data points to determine the risk factors in opening or closing schools. What I would tell you right now is that I have a weekly meeting with the county health department. The county health department will continue to provide us with guidance and support, and has continued to support our blended model. If at any time right now, until absent that information from the state, the county says we have concerns, we will pause and communicate with the board about those concerns. Right now, and again, I can only give you from last week Thursday till today, we're still in a spot where the county has given the district approval record, continues to say we are in the right mode, we have the right PPE, we have the right plan to provide a safe environment for our students and staff.
And then I have a question. Let's see here. Am I on here? Did I turn it off? No. For Joyce, in regard to special ed, what is that going to look like when we return to school? I know that was very challenging in spring when we went virtual. It's very difficult, obviously, to teach special ed students. What are we doing different in order to connect with our special education students?
I think you said Joyce, but I bet you met Joanne.
Joanne.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Joyce. I didn't, if you got the answer, you can give it to me, but otherwise, let's go to Joanne here.
Thank you.
That's especially funny because Mark often calls me Joyce. So he gave the double thumbs up because someone else did it. We are going to take great care of our students with IEPs. Today I met with some groups of special education teachers. Tomorrow I have another meeting. They're meeting with me to talk about all the things that we can do to meet student needs. And of course, we start with the picture of what face-to-face service a general education student might have. So, we look at 20% of the face-to-face service at the secondary and about 40% of face-to-face service at the elementary level based on our current blended model plan. And so for families who pick the blended model, that's a starting point, not a black and white area, but a rule or kind of a place to start questions about the amount of face-to-face time we may be able to provide special education students. From there, we absolutely have the ability to make individual decisions for students about whether or not the plan that we have in place will help them make progress in their IEP goals. And so our case managers will be having good conversations with families and talking about whether or not the virtual and blend and face-to-face options will meet their needs and help them progress in those goals, or if they need to have a different balance of those two services. So, for example, if we have a student who has significant disabilities who cannot access technology and may be able not to navigate the computer, for example, we may want to consider for those students more time that they would be face-to-face with their staff members so that they're able to receive their instruction, their specially designed instruction, in person rather than the computer when that's not the case. Just as one example, those meetings each were an hour apiece today and another hour tomorrow. So there's a lot to say about this. Am I hitting the mark of what you were wondering about? Do you have other questions?
You really don't have a plan. You're just working on it. Is that what you're saying? You still don't have a plan for how that's going to work.
So I wouldn't say that I'm saying that. I think that because we have about 850 students who receive that if I'm sending that message, that's not the one I intend to send. So let me try to do a better job for you.
Okay.
So our students with IEPs, an IEP is so important. It's an individual education plan. And so it wouldn't be accurate for us to have a group education plan. Each decision about students is supposed to be done on an individual basis. And so we will be providing for students that have the blended model, there's plans all the way from students who are 3 years old with significant disabilities to age 21 and everything in between. So it'd be very difficult to articulate a plan outside of the fact that our case managers meet with the teams of people who write those IEPs and make decisions for the individual to make progress on their written educational goals. And that might mean they have more time, or in some cases, maybe even less time than a general education peer in terms of their face-to-face. And that individual plan is the plan that a student would have in order to make progress with those IEP goals. It would not be okay for me to say, this is how everything is going to happen, or for me to say, if a group of students has Mrs. Smith for their teacher, we should never say, oh, you have Mrs. Smith, this is what your package looks like. Instead, we should be doing that based on the individual and that individual's needs, because each child's needs are different than another. And so we have provided a multi-page question and answer document to our staff members, and have done in-person meetings. We have had very few questions. They're feeling solid on the support that we've received, that we've given them. And I'd be happy to take more questions.
I'm wondering, Joanne, it's in Mark's report, he indicated that 20% of the families have requested, or students have requested, full-time distance learning. I'm wondering, do you have any kids with significant disabilities that have requested, it's 100% distance learning? And how do you go about meeting their needs if that's the case?
Yeah, so I bet we will, but I haven't yet seen the list of names and been able to cross-check the information that you're asking about. So certainly that's something we're going to do. And my guess would be yes, there will be individuals with significant disabilities who will select full virtual learning for an array of reasons. Some reasons might be that they might be medically fragile as well, for example. And so just like we did in the spring, our case managers communicate directly with the family. They meet with a team and they talk about what that can look like. For some students, it means that there are some face-to-face opportunities. Maybe the teacher, for example, is working with another student, but the camera can be on the teacher and they can join the lesson virtually. In other cases, maybe that's recorded so the family can view it later. In some cases, the teacher definitely logs on and the student is there on the screen live at that time, sometimes with a parent, sometimes not, and they're going to be working on their goals in that way as well. For some of our students who are unable to access technology, we offer other options to access their learning. So for example, and I like to use the term distance learning because we might send them some paper items or a packet of things to take care of because that's more appropriate for where they are developmentally. We might send home what's called a task box. And so we put together things that relate to the student's goals that they would accomplish. And they may or may not be able to interact with the teacher online in that case. Our teachers had great parent communication this spring, and we expect that again in the fall. They log all that contact in Infinite Campus, and so we stay in close contact so that we can make those tough decisions. It is certainly an individual decision, but also one that is guided by their plan. So we would be meeting those individual needs by having great communication with their team and, again, providing it in the mode that is best for the student.
Joanne,
Correct me if I'm wrong, Joanne, but I view that as equity at its finest. That
Well,
we're meeting the
yeah,
needs of the students.
Everybody gets what they need.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's
Right.
a great way to look at it.
Okay, Catherine, you had a question?
yes, exactly how do you do the distance learning? One of my grandchildren, the teacher just cut on a computer and he may have forgotten. And there is no method that they're using to see if he's advancing. And my other grandchildren,
Well, maybe I can help, and then if Jason and Pam, because I think it's probably more than just special education that we're talking about. So I guess I would articulate that our distance learning model might change a bit based on what your grade level is and what the topic of subjects are. So in our current distance model, our elementary students, so kindergarten through, well, 4K actually, through 5th grade, would be assigned similar to a classroom teacher. And then that classroom teacher would develop lessons that they would provide to the students on a daily basis. There would also be opportunities for those students to work in small groups, depending on their ability to access technology. I think sometimes that's the reality. If you're talking about 1st graders, they might need some help getting logged in, and someone has to be home maybe to do that. If you're talking about 5th graders, they might be a little more agile in that. When we look at a middle school and high school model, they will have an actual teacher assignment. And again, we're working through the processes of those, and that those students will have a schedule: math, science, social studies, language arts, and electives. And the teachers will provide their new instructional practices and the learning during that virtual time. So if I have a math teacher, I'm going to be learning math with that teacher and with other kids who are online virtually, depending on where I am. I will have assignments, I'll have assessments, and I will be getting feedback based on where that is. I think the biggest challenge for virtual learning, 100%, at least things that we saw before, is making sure that students are present when they need to be there. So it's one thing that if it's first hour and I'm in school, from first hour I go to second hour and to third hour. At home, for me to tune out of math causes me to have a click or close it, and then I'm out, right? So engagement is really, really critical. And that's the challenge that I know that our teachers will have moving forward in 100% virtual and the blended model, because we're not there all the time, is trying to keep kids engaged. And the better we do by keeping kids engaged and keeping them enthused and new learning and getting feedback, the better we'll be. And we are confident that we will be better at it than we were when we started in March. But we also know that it's not ideal, that we don't have nearly, I can't walk up to you, Catherine, and say, do you have a question? When you're not in my room. I can type something, but if you're not even showing up, it's hard. And that's the piece that is really the challenge, is the disconnect from me being able to ask you a question. Now, I want you to repeat back to me. I can say that in the virtual screen, but if you're not there, it's hard for you to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think the elementary model, they'll be assigned a classroom teacher, and there's some opportunities, but they will probably forget at times during the regular face-to-face lessons, right? We know that, but the engagement and the teacher being able to be there probably helps them get a better feel for where they are. So that's something that we hope that in our community we can become healthy and quickly or quicker get back to a face-to-face model, because that is definitely the best.
Mark, I'd like to add to that too, that it's great to have engagement, and I do completely agree that we need that, but we also need our students to feel accountable for attendance. And I don't know how that's going to be, moving forward, but I do feel as though that's very important, especially for grading. They knew when the word got out, especially like middle school, when the word got out that they weren't actually receiving grades, I think that made them feel a little loosey-goosey about having to attend school. So I think if we have that accountability and are consistent with that, that may help also.
Yeah, we're starting the school year is definitely different than managing the school year in the middle, when we're leaving. So we have plans, and again, we'll have assessments. Our expectations are definitely there for attendance. And I would articulate that our expectations on a face-to-face day is there, like you're supposed to be here every day. And you've seen district-wide that, at times, we're just above 90%, which would tell us that on any given day, 500 kids aren't attending school. So if you're virtual, that's a challenge in and of itself, right? Because, I mean, but we can put the beauty of virtuals, we can tape those lessons. There's other things that teachers can do. We can keep moving back and forth, but there is engagement is critical, and I 100% agree. We'll do better this year. I'm confident.
Mark,
Go ahead, Catherine.
yep, sorry.
My school district that my grandson goes to, they only have,
Mm.
and my daughter said, she goes, "Oh, I said, go to the school board. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that we have a plan, and we're going to work through the blended model and the virtual model, and definitely are excited about some options.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. Mark, you had mentioned the assessments. I'm assuming you're referring to district level assessments. And has there been some discussion in regard to when they're going to occur in the fall?
I think assessments are going to occur the first 2 weeks in terms of teachers trying to find ways to figure out where kids are at. I
Right.
definitely know that we're all anxious to get a feel for what has happened between March 18th and September 1. So I know I could probably turn it over to Jason and Pam. Jason has an assessment calendar that they've put together that would articulate some internal assessments. And maybe they have something they want to add to that. They could.
Yes, thank you. Pam and I brought together some district leaders from representing every grade band to review our current 2021 assessment calendar and make some decisions about the fall assessment calendar. And one of the decisions we made was we really had a calendar from fall, winter, spring. We really wanted to focus just on fall so we can see how this goes and implement and assess how the assessment window goes. And with the input of those leaders, we really stripped down the assessment calendar, the assessments that we administer versus the state, to the essentials, giving our staff members what we feel is the assessment data that will drive instruction. And we have a draft of that fall assessment calendar. We now have it in the hands of some folks across the district for their feedback, with the goal of finalizing that fall assessment calendar in the coming days and week. I believe, Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have the fall assessment calendar as an agenda item on the next curriculum committee for sharing as well when it's more finalized than not.
Yeah, if fall to me means, it's like September to, mid-November or the end of November. It's I guess, as Mark had suggested, we need to know where those kids are functioning. It's when they come back to school, because we're dealing with a situation that we've never dealt with before in our educational history.
Yeah, our fall window, the latest assessment window that we would consider in fall is the first week of November. And then that team that came together has calendared time the middle of November again to evaluate how it went and make decisions for the winter. And then we'll replicate that model when we talk about the spring as well.
So you don't anticipate doing any assessments until mid-November?
No, I'm sorry. The last date of this assessment
Okay.
ends November 6th. It begins as there are windows that we have open or will open as soon as September 8th.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for Chris.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Can you explain what you're doing for the ventilation systems in the buildings to mitigate the COVID-19? I know you had that in the director's report, but can you just explain a little bit what you're doing? I think there's a lot of people concerned about that.
Sure. Classroom, so that helps. We did identify some extra areas that we could clean in above the ceilings that were coils. We also are looking at running our ventilation system more before school and after school. And then we're learning what our capabilities are when it turns cold in the months of November, December, January, where we are not able to bring in as much cold air without freezing our equipment up. So we're looking at some of our limitations. And then we're also right now looking at taking out the actual screens and cleaning the fresh air intakes that are typically, or anyway, because that's a high load of heat and it's efficient to clean those out. So
Chris,
some of it's a combination
Chris,
of continue to do, and much of it is learn limitations for the winter, and then we learn some new things that we can do as well.
Chris, I think from the central office standpoint, you were cutting out a bunch. I'm not sure if that was the case, so it was hard to hear, but because I've heard it before, I could make an attempt to try to reiterate. Yeah, just let me try to do it from here, and then you correct me if I make any mistakes. So, Lisa, a couple of things that I think I heard him say, and I've heard him say before. One is that the central air ventilation, the amount of air that exchanges from the outside to the inside, is controlled by an electronic unit. We have the ability to decide when that electronic unit comes on and when it goes off. For the purposes of saving electricity and air exchange, we typically turn that unit off at night when there are no students present, and we turn it back on maybe an hour before school. It then brings in the outside air and either heats it or brings it back into the system. What Chris was talking about is, generally, it's pretty easy to do when you don't have to heat the air, because you can bring all kinds of outside air in, bring it into the system, and then exchange it to the outside. Because when the air is similar or near to the property or the current temperature inside, it doesn't take much. When it gets to be November or maybe middle October and the outside air is, let's say, 30 degrees, we have to bring that outside air in and then warm it to 68 degrees or 65 degrees and then put it through. It takes a lot more time to take the outside air when you have to warm it and put it through, and we have capacity. Our current outside air is monitored. There's a model by the state that says you must have X. We exceed that currently. We're going to turn on our vent so that we have more air earlier in the morning. So we're going to start it maybe at 5 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. Exchange the outside air to bring that in. In the fall, it's a little bit easier. Outside air could also include windows. It could include that we have in the fall. So I'm comfortable with that. What we continue to look at, and we've always met the expectations for the state, and we continue to meet the new COVID expectations to bring outside air in. The more outside air we bring in, the more we have to heat it in the winter, and the harder it becomes to keep the room temperature at the place that you want it. So, to be honest with you, we've never tried to exceed or double the amount of outside air when it's 0 degrees. I'm not sure, because you don't want to pump 48 degree air into your classroom. You need to pump 68 degree air. And if I double it, I have to make sure that our system can push and warm the air. So we have boilers, we will exceed that. It will be easy to do in the fall. And when we have to start heating it, it becomes a little bit more difficult. To be honest with you, we're not quite sure. But we know that even with our system that we had in place previously, we exceed the amount of outside air. It's based on your classroom size, capacity, and students. And we do that across the district.
So with that, and we're not sure how that will work with heat, will we as parents be notified if that exchange ceases to happen so that we can make alternative decisions if or when that happens?
Sure. So I shouldn't have alarmed you at all. We
Will
will
always
always exchange
air.
air. It will constantly be exchanged. The air that we currently exchange is at a greater level than the expectations now, and we will continue to do that in the winter months. Okay, that is a state requirement to be a public facility.
Okay.
What I'm saying is we are currently exceeding that, right? And for us to exceed it even more, I'm not sure, right, how much it will take us to heat it and then bring it in, right? So I have no concerns that we are meeting and exceeding the state expectation in the summer and in the winter. We will always do that. It's just, can we exceed it even more? Because I think that's what people are looking for. Can we add even more? And I think we can, but I'm not sure how much the air exchanger will be able to take. And that, I think, is what Chris was trying to articulate in the winter.
Okay. Yeah. I'm the one sending my baby in, so I just want to make sure.
Right, and we do know the easy way, start it earlier and run it for longer, right? Because that will cost more, but it won't cause our system to run harder.
Okay, and it looks like Chris has agreed with most of what you said, Mark, so you may have a second vacation here. But anyways, any other questions for our directors? Okay, if not, we'll move on to our return to school update. We've done some of that, of course, within this report, but I'll turn that over to Mark again.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing what I articulate is that on Friday, we asked our families to have their decisions to us. We've taken a few since then. We sent out a communication by buildings to families who might not have responded. We've articulated that at this time, if we didn't hear by the end of the day today, that we put all the students who had not, we had not heard from in the blended model. We need to place them somewhere. Right now, we have around 1,000 students who have articulated that they would like the 100% virtual.
Wow.
So Joyce and I this afternoon, and we'll continue to do that, will basically take and identify by grade band, and we have a big sheet now, of how many per level do we have. And that will help us then isolate the needs of staffing, specifically for the 100% virtual. But we also, as you can imagine, have to take a look at, I'll just give you an example. If we had 75 third graders at Franklin Elementary School, and at Franklin, 18 of those students wanted 100% virtual, you then need to take 18 out of that mix of 75. What I'm going to do as a district, though, is I add those 18 with all the other kids district-wide, because we won't have likely enough in some of our schools to have a class. So what we'll do is we'll pair up the 75 virtual students and then break those into classes themselves. In order to do that at the elementary level, I'll need teachers to teach virtually, right? And so that's the model. We have some who have indicated that they have interest in doing that and they want to do that. And we have some areas where we don't have enough, and we'll have to reach out and try to find that. So those will be that's the work that is happening right now, is trying to first identify where those students are. Then as we put them in our Infinite Campus student management system, we will then be able to break out by family the options for morning, afternoon. So what we said to our families is that to every extent possible, we'll help you with where you're at, but we need to first place that in a system. And then after we let families know, we would then potentially look at options if we can move them. But we'll put the families together. So if I'm a fourth grader and a third grader at one building, they'll both have the same morning or afternoon session, not one in the morning and one in the afternoon. We even have the ability to do that with the high school. So if we have a high school and 2 elementary school students, we could have all 3 of them in the same, that's the system that we're working on right now. All 3 of them would be in the same. Obviously, we need to know what the preference is so that we can put them in, whether they're 100% virtual or blended. So that is the work as we speak, and that's what we're working on. We asked the principals to help us last week with a FAQ specifically by grade band, and that will go out to the families this week. and I'll share that as soon as we have it wordsmithed and finalized. And what I see by grade band is our principals are receiving questions and comments and input from students and parents by the elementary, the middle school, and high school. And so the FAQ will go out. Here's questions that we're getting from the elementary, from the middle school, and high school. And they have the same model that we'll use for our staff. So they're also getting FAQs from our staff, specifically from the elementary that might fit just the elementary folks, the middle school, and high school. Obviously, we'll share it with all, but we'll put in their grade band so that people who are most interested in that will go there. We do have some information that we'll share with the staff. I'll share it with you that'll go out this week, just in regards to, we shared some last week, returning back to the buildings, what that looks like, and as they're prepping for students coming back. We continue to meet. Our nurses are working hard, making sure that we have all the protocols. Chris and his team are identifying the places where all the hand sanitizers will go in the hallways. Our directors continue to meet with groups, whether that's teacher leaders, teacher teams, whether that's administrators, and talking about the plans and returning to work. We've got our learning liaisons, or the teacher leaders from each grade band and group, meeting tomorrow and tomorrow's Wednesday and Thursday, to do some professional development. So we continue to work hard. I know in addition to that, everybody's doing all the other things. I had a conversation today with our bus company. We're working hard to try to make sure that we can meet the busing needs of our families. Our current bus contract is in place, but we also have a lot of mid-year routes or midday routes. As you can imagine, when we have half days, kids never had to ride the bus in the elementary school at noon. So now people will get picked up or dropped off at noon. Now the pickup and drop off is not a problem from the bus perspective, but they're just logistics into who does need to be picked up and drop off and who's getting a ride to school. So as soon as we can identify the AM and PM sessions, the bus company then will be able to identify routes. And, again, everything kind of is fitting hand in glove. In addition to that, we are constantly monitoring our district and community's health. And again, like I said before, we're always taking the conversation to the county and state medical specialists, making sure that we're on track and answering any questions that they might have regarding our back to school plan. Are there some questions that I can answer specifically that you're wondering about, or you'd like to know?
Mark, when do you anticipate that our teaching staff will know what their responsibilities are? And obviously before September 1st.
Yeah, teaching staff, I think I would ask Joyce to give me some backup. Know their roles right now. Some of those might be changing a bit. One of the things that I would articulate is we are trying to do our best to mitigate travel, specifically with our specialists. So in our typical specialist plan, lots of times you have someone who is teaching at an elementary school and 1 or 2 sections at the middle school, or they're teaching at the middle school and 1 or 2 sections at the high school. So we are working hard to try to make sure, if we can, in many cases, keep teachers at one site. There are some cases that's just not possible. So teachers likely know, with the exception of a few of those, where they are at. And again, the new challenge is trying to reach back out to those staff members who have had private conversations with Joyce about their interest in returning to school, and maybe teaching virtually because of various reasons, and then trying to match them with available work. But if I'm a English teacher teaching 9th grade English and 10th grade English at Lincoln, that's my role, is teaching 9th grade and 10th grade English. Right now, if I'm a 1st grade teacher at Jefferson, that's my role to teach 1st grade at Jefferson. In some cases, we're going to reach out, like I said, and we'll need some supports for virtual. But again, what our teachers, I believe, right now know what their role is, whether they're in a blended model or 100% virtual. I think they know their role. Some specialists might be still waiting.
Any Any other questions here for Mark regarding returning to school?
Yeah, I'd like to just make a comment about the staff. I think it's very, very important that we have the staff on board during the reopening. I want them to feel comfortable and have knowledge of communication. And sometimes I just don't get that feeling that they're being communicated to. So I'm really very adamant about, having open communication with them. I'd also like to see their building principals, engaging them, engaging how comfortable they feel with coming back into the building, getting their input, just having overall more communication. I think we owe that to our staff.
Yeah, I know that I've given some of our leadership direction in communications that's coming from the district versus communications that's coming from the buildings. But I do know that our elementary principals and some of our middle school folks have been having, or this week, they've scheduled meetings with all their staff to try to answer and question, do some Q&A. Joyce and I had a meeting last week with some union leadership, and we'll follow up again this week to try to get some input from them on other questions that are out there or things that we aren't hearing of or that we want to be able to address. I will acknowledge that there is definitely, for all of us, some anxiety because we are starting in something that we've never done before. And when you think about where we are, the fact that 20% of our families are saying, I'm not comfortable coming back at all, we haven't seen that same communication from staff. We have not seen 20% of our staff give us feedback that says they're not comfortable coming back. I know Lisa has met with a few of those folks, but I agree, Lisa. We're gonna, I think Thursday we're meeting again with a group. I know that, for example, Jason and Pam met with music and art teachers yesterday, talking about what that looks like. I know that there's a group of teachers meeting tomorrow, so I know that in topic levels, we're trying to do our best to get feedback and listen to what they have to say. And we have a document pretty close to ready to send out to talk to them about what their work obligations will be and what we're going to do with aids and support. And I will share that with the board prior to the staff. I'm just not ready to talk the details about it right now. But I want you to see it first.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. You've answered my question. But again, the staff needs to be on board with this to make this reopening successful. So
we are well aware of the need of. We can't do it without them. So we're listening.
Thank you.
Mark, I'm wondering, have you seen a noticeable increase in open enrollment requests?
It's hard to say noticeable, but we've seen an increase. So what I would say is I believe we may lose some students who are on the borders of our district, is what I've seen right now, that are tending to go to smaller schools who have 100% face-to-face.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you that it doesn't mean that they're going to leave. It just means that they filled out the paperwork. Mishicot would be one and Valders would be another. Those are the two schools that we typically lose kids to on the borders either way. So I'm not quite sure what that means. If halfway down the system that they have to make a change to their current model, and then now that option isn't as good as I thought. But I would anticipate us losing a few more students. And again, I'm not quite sure what that looks like. I know that Sean continues to take those and we file the applications. I also know that we've gotten a few from folks who are at places where there is not a blended model option, and they would like to have more than just online with no faculty member helping them versus 100% face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
But we typically are in the red in terms of out versus in. Yeah. And I would say that we're going to see some of that. I mean, it's hard to know until they actually enroll. I mean, we get I would say 70% of the people who fill out the form end up leaving. That means 30% don't go. They fill it out like they're going to go and they just don't. So I'm not sure what COVID-19 will bring, but we have seen some, not 100, but maybe 15 that I think are 100% because of their interest in being 100% face-to-face.
All right. Thank you.
Mark, did you mention this earlier, but what you may have about DHS and DPI helping us out, setting a measure as to if we need to flip things all to virtual? What is that measure for our district?
Yeah, so what I would tell you right now is the measure does not exist. What I'm seeing as, so we can use a couple of tools that we're looking at. One is our current, the county has a level, right? And that level talks about the number of positive cases, the threshold of those positive cases, and whether that number is increasing or decreasing. And again, I've only heard pieces and parts, but what we've heard is that the state's model chooses the state data and the increase and decrease as opposed to the local data. So I'm not sure what that means, but the indication that I saw from the superintendent's group that I have a meeting tomorrow indicated again that might not come till the 24th of August. And I'm not sure that we're going to, I guess we will do whatever the health professionals tell us and we will bring that to the board. I think it'd be pretty challenging to pivot on the 24th if there isn't any new information. So again, I'm anticipating them using the same data that we've seen before with the county health department. And I think I showed you the last time that threshold that talks about that. That's the only data points that we have that point to how we are doing. Right now, we have high access, right? We continue to see trends that would mean that we are in the high area. There are 34 counties that are in the high area. So that's why I think school districts and the state might end up using the state data because almost all of the districts are in the high level. But again, I could articulate a number of other things that we've talked about. The ability to quarantine, which is one, and the county is the only one who quarantines, but if we can help them, they're comfortable with that, right? The ability to track cases, that's an important piece. So if we have these cohorts and somebody in a cohort is there, we have the ability to track where they've been and how many kids they've been in contact with. That's a factor to that. When we start, the number of positive cases is also a factor. But again, the county is going to be the one who is going to ultimately say and again, the district has the right to close, but the county will be ultimately the one who says, you have X number of cases. There isn't going to be a number. It's going to be the county having a conversation saying, we have concerns. The information that I continue to hear from our healthcare professionals is it is likely that continued and increased number of adults will close schools and districts quicker than kids. Because when you think about it, the adult has many, many more contacts and we have fewer adults. So if we have 5,000 kids and 800 adults and 10% of our population of both get it, we still have 4,000 kids that we need to teach. And I only have 700 adults to do it. We won't be able to manage it. So much like sickness, we're going to have to make a change because I don't have the adults in the physical building to teach the kids. So those are the challenges before us. I guess I would say this. I'm leaning right now very heavily on our county health department and making sure that they are lockstep with what we have. If I get any information from the state in the next days, I will share that. And they, again, are saying that they're going to have these thresholds. But I've been in meetings every week, and they told me every week they're coming since July 15th.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is this. People have made decisions on statewide health, and some people liked them and some didn't, and then it went to court, and then those decisions were overturned. People are very hesitant to make any kind of statewide decisions, even though we need the matrix that likely could be universal, because
Right.
nobody wants to make the decision that somebody else takes back and says, well, you can't do this. So they're trying to give local decision-making to the boards and school districts. And then they would likely, after you make your decision now, what they're going to do is they're going to give you this matrix that you probably could use. Right? And I would say that loosely because if we're not going to take the guidance from healthcare professionals, I'm not sure who am I going to take the guidance from.
Right.
So I will lean heavy on them right now.
Well, I appreciate that information. I almost feel like if you get information that we need to act on before our next meeting, then we definitely need, because our teachers are going to need that heads up if we need to switch around things.
Absolutely. Well, we will need to probably make some changes if we have to. I mean, we can pivot quickly, but to shift from 4,000 kids in a blended model to 5,000 kids in a 100% virtual.
Right. That's big.
It's good. We're at work a little bit. Like, it's not like we can't do it and we haven't done it, but to do it well, we might need to pivot a couple of days to give us staff to get it together.
Yep.
Mark, I have a small suggestion, but I think it could make a big impact. One of the things that we, as teachers are concerned about, and I think even kids are about seeing the faces of their teachers when they go to school and how important that is to relate to one another. And I did see a news item in the last couple of days that a district in Florida has implemented that the teachers each wear a button with their face on it. So you know how they have in the sports? Wondering if that might be a possibility. I don't know if this is really the venue to bring that up, but I just thought it was an opportunity to say something. But to have that, you know, smiling face of their teacher on them, because otherwise they're looking at a mask, and especially for our young kids, that can be very daunting. So I just thought I'd throw that out there for an idea. I don't know if anyone wants to pick up on that or not. So
yeah, I know that one of the calendar communications we have, for example, is picture day. And on picture day, all the staff get their picture taken and we use those for ID badges. So our teachers do have a smaller photo. Yeah, I guess I would want to get some feedback from teachers and how comfortable they are with that. But yeah, I mean, anything we can do to help build the positiveness of what's coming back. There is a threshold, and I don't know where it lays, where it says that you have so much in place that it's not worth it, right? You have so many protocols in place that it doesn't become a positive environment anymore. I don't believe we're there, but we do want to, I mean, we're aware of that, right? We're coming to school and we're going to take temperatures and we've got 6-foot distancing and they're only half days and the kids aren't moving and we're got hand sanitizers and we're talking. We understand that we do want school to be a positive environment for all. And so we have to keep that in mind. And I appreciate feedback. We'll see what we can do to help make sure that teachers and kids are happy, right? I mean, that's the best we can do. So thank you.
yeah.
Watch the number of hospitalizations and or deaths instead of getting information from them, because when they announced that there was, I don't know, what it was, 97,000 new cases, and they were testing everybody, but oops, they forgot to tell you that there was 58,000 negative.
Yeah, one of the,
You can't depend on those things.
thank you for that. One of the pieces that our county health department has articulated is the amount of space available for healthcare. And so our healthcare is a region. And I would articulate that that is a factor. You have to have space available in your healthcare. The challenging part of that is it seems a bit morbid, right? If we have beds available, we're okay, because then when you get sick, you can go get ventilators and beds. That's literally what, but that is a factor universally across the United States that districts and communities are looking at to what the spread has and is, do you have access to healthcare? So we are monitoring that as well.
Okay, Mark, just to change it from the COVID-19 thing, where are we at with our athletic programs in fall and our extracurricular activities, particularly those that would take place on days when we aren't in school.
Right now, the district agreed with our conference to move all fall sports start to September 1st or September 7th. The WIAA made a change, but it only moved until August 17th. And our county and our conference superintendent says we're not going to allow people to gather at this time until we get school started, and then we'll see from there. I have a meeting coming up next week with the conference superintendent. I do know that the WIAA is meeting again this week. We continue to see football conferences at the college level fold and move to the spring. Our conference made a recommendation that we would move all fall sports to the spring, specifically because the concern of students gathering and trying to provide an option. That was not approved at this time. We're hoping that they will give us some guidance, and as a school district, we will not be required to make an isolated decision. I'm going to do everything I can to have the conference make a decision that we can agree upon and then share that with the board, as opposed to the Manitowoc Public School District making a decision independent of the conference. What I would tell you right now is Green Bay, Manitowoc, and Sheboygan, Howard Schwamico, which is Bayport, are all either virtual or blended. When you think about the challenges moving forward, I am an advocate for co-curricular. I think it's an important part of what we do on a regular basis. I have serious concerns about moving our kids through 3 different counties: Sheboygan, Manitowoc, and Green Bay. I really hope as a conference we can make a quality decision that will provide options for our student athletes. And if they don't, then I will bring this conversation back to the board on the 28th. And then I think we're going to have to make a decision. I'll have a recommendation. I'll share that with you ahead of time, but I'm hoping well before that our conference or the WIA makes a decision.
Yeah.
I would hopefully avoid a lot of challenges that we would face.
Any other questions on the opening plan? This will be, of course, on the agenda for our next meeting, which may or may not be in 2 weeks. We could have one in a week. Be prepared for that, depending on what information you receive. So thank you, Mark. I'll move on to unfinished business. This is an item that I want to continually have on our agenda. I have a question for Mark in regard to our academic achievement gaps. How are we going to be able to attack those gaps if those students are in a virtual learning environment?
Well, I think acknowledging the fact that we have gaps and identifying opportunities to engage those students who we might not be working with as well on a virtual model. We are going to have to do our due diligence for all kids, but especially students whom have not achieved previously, who are in a virtual model, to reach out to them, to reach out to their families and continue to help them be engaged. We're not going to be able to allow them to just not participate or not be engaged, and that's going to require us to reach out individually to those students and those families and try to connect with them to find out what is keeping them from engaging, and are there anything that we can do to help them feel more comfortable so they can engage. And we know that that will be our challenge as we sit here today, is that we know that the virtual model, 100% virtual, or does not provide equal access to all. You know, we gave away some pucks. I think at the curriculum committee, they articulated that the survey we got back said 97% of the people had access to technology, but we asked them in a technology survey, right? So we know that there are families that have a difficult time with access. We know that the free Wi-Fi was not eligible to families who had a bill.
Overnight.
I just want to point out that this, and maybe, the board does know that this item came to the board for discussion in the past, and we had some concerns in regards to the increases that were proposed, and we felt that we need to do incremental increases over time rather than one big, huge increase. So, I think, it's what was proposed is consistent with the direction of the board, and I think it's worth approving.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that motion is carried as well. Is there any other business that anyone on the board would like to bring up at tonight's meeting?
Yeah, I have one more thing. I would like to bring up public input once again and how we're going to go about getting public input. We've talked about it at various times, but we haven't had any movement on it. So I don't know, do we open up a discussion with our IT department? What is it going to take? Because I do feel as though, we need to get that going.
You mean at board meetings?
At board meetings, yes.
Right, because we are receiving public input. In fact, we're receiving more public input than certainly than I have in my time on the board, although it's in a different fashion.
Right.
But I agree with you. That's an issue with this type of virtual setup. It doesn't do well with public input, but there has to be a better way to do it. Right now, we're not even having it at all.
Right. I'm wondering if we can reach out to
content.
Oops, sorry. I'm wondering if we can reach out to some other districts, or perhaps WASB may have some suggestions on how to go about doing that. But I do feel like it's very important. And again, not everyone has access to technology. And even those who do may struggle with our setup. I mean, gosh, I'm like late getting on a couple times because I have my own struggles and I feel like I know what I'm doing. So I can only imagine how a lot of people struggle with it and they get very frustrated. So I do feel as though we had to open this up, to our public somehow in a easier fashion too. So.
Okay. As far as future meeting dates, I know that the finance committee is setting up a meeting in the next week or so, or I believe it might be before our next board meeting.
Correct.
Curriculum has a meeting set up, I believe. Is that correct, Jason and Pam?
Yes, on August 20th.
Okay, anything for personnel?
Not at this time, but, you know, certainly, Lisa, if you think we need to meet, we can connect and set something up.
And Chris, building and grounds.
Not at this time. I hope I
Okay.
came over this time clearer.
Yeah, that worked good. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but no, I don't have a
Right.
meeting right now. Thank you.
Right, we worked it out. If not, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. See you at our next meeting. Thank you.
Good night.
Good
night, everybody.
night.